What you're about to hear will shatter everything you thought you knew about professional wrestling. This isn't speculation, this isn't rumor. This is a bombshell confession that's been hidden from the wrestling world for far too long. A mystery attacker, a calculated assault, and a conspiracy that reaches the highest levels of the wrestling industry. I'm talking about CM Punk, the Second City Saint, the voice of the voiceless, the man who changed wrestling forever, and someone wanted him gone. You're watching Wrestle Scope, and today we're diving into the darkest secret in modern wrestling history. The mystery man has finally broken his silence, and what he's revealed will leave you furious, shocked, and questioning everything you've ever believed about this business. Hello viewers, if you're new here, please don't forget to like and hit the subscribe button for daily updates on WWE Raw. This is the story they didn't want you to know, but the truth always comes out. All Out weekend, the wrestling world is buzzing. CM Punk, the biggest star in the industry, the man who delivered the pipe bomb heard around the world, is nowhere to be seen. He walked away from the spotlight at the peak of his powers. Fans are demanding answers. The internet is on fire. But what if I told you that CM Punk didn't just walk away? What if there was a reason he had to disappear? What if someone wanted him out of the picture so badly that they were willing to pay to make it happen? Here's what makes my blood boil. While you and I were sitting at home, loyal fans, buying merchandise, watching every show, supporting this industry with our hard-earned money, there were people backstage making backroom deals to destroy the career of the most authentic voice in wrestling. And they got away with it. For years they got away with it. Until now. The mystery attacker who was hired to take out CM Punk has come forward, and the name he's dropped, it's going to make you sick. It's going to make you want to cancel your subscriptions. It's going to make you question whether this entire industry is rigged from the top down. But before I reveal the shocking truth, you need to understand the full story, because this conspiracy goes deeper than you could ever imagine. This isn't just about one attack. This is about power. This is about control. This is about keeping the wrestlers who speak truth to power silenced. So buckle up. Drop a comment right now telling me if you think you already know who's behind this, because I guarantee you're wrong. And smash that like button, because this video is about to get buried by the powers that be, and we need to make sure everyone sees this truth. The setup. Let's rewind. Let's go back to the beginning of this nightmare. CM Punk was untouchable. The man was a main eventer, a pay-per-view draw, a merchandise-moving machine. He had the respect of the locker room, the adoration of the fans, and the kind of creative control that made him dangerous to the corporate suits who wanted to keep wrestling formulaic and predictable. But Punk was different. He didn't play by their rules. He spoke his mind, he called out the politics, he exposed the favoritism, and that made him enemies, powerful enemies. Now here's where it gets interesting. In the weeks leading up to his departure, there were reports of backstage tension. There were whispers of confrontations. There were stories about Punk feeling disrespected, underutilized, and pushed to his breaking point. The official story? Punk walked away because he was burned out. He needed time off. He was frustrated with the creative direction. Blah, blah, blah. But that's what they wanted you to believe. The truth is far more sinister. According to the mystery man who has now come forward, there was a plan in motion. A plan to make sure CM Punk could never return to wrestling. A plan to sideline him permanently. A plan that involved physical intimidation. This mystery attacker, who we'll call John to protect his identity for now, was approached at an independent wrestling show in the Midwest. He was a journeyman wrestler, tough, capable, and willing to do whatever it took to make a name for himself. John was offered an envelope. Inside that envelope was $5,000 in cash and a photograph of CM Punk. The instructions were simple. Find Punk, confront him, and make sure he understood that his time in the wrestling business was over. Now, some of you might be thinking, wait, this sounds too crazy to be true. And you know what? I thought the same thing when I first heard this story. But then John provided receipts, text messages, bank records, photographic evidence. This is real, people. John carried out the attack. He waited outside a gym where Punk was training. He approached him in the parking lot, and what happened next was caught on security camera footage that has never been released to the public. The confrontation turned physical. Punches were thrown. Punk, being the fighter he is, defended himself. But the message was delivered loud and clear. Someone wanted him gone. And the most chilling part? John says this wasn't the only attack that was orchestrated. There were others. Other wrestlers who were paid to harass Punk, to spread rumors, to make his life a living hell. But who would do this? Who had the resources, the connections, and the motive to orchestrate such a conspiracy? That's the million-dollar question, and the answer is going to shock you. The suspects. Before we reveal the mastermind behind this attack, let's look at the suspect, because in professional wrestling, everyone has a motive. Suspect number 1, the jealous competitor. CM Punk didn't just have fans, he had rivals, wrestlers who resented his success, guys who felt like Punk was getting opportunities that should have been theirs. There were stories about locker room heat, about guys who thought Punk was arrogant, difficult to work with, self-centered. Maybe one of those competitors decided to take matters into their own hands. Maybe they pooled their money together and hired John to send a message. It's possible, but here's the problem with this theory. No single wrestler had the kind of cash flow to orchestrate multiple attacks. This wasn't a one-time grudge payment. This was an organized campaign, and that requires serious money. Suspect number 2, the scorned executive. CM Punk famously had issues with management. He called out executives by name on television. He criticized the way the company was run. He refused to be a corporate puppet. That kind of defiance doesn't go unpunished in the wrestling business. Could a high-ranking executive have hired John to intimidate Punk? Absolutely. These are people with money, power, and a vested interest in keeping their top stars in line. Think about it. If Punk was causing problems, making demands, threatening to expose the inner workings of the company, what better way to neutralize him than through fear? Hire someone to rough him up, make him understand that there are consequences for speaking out. This theory has legs, but it's still not the full picture. Suspect number 3, the corporate machine. Here's where things get really dark. What if this wasn't about one person? What if this was about the system itself? Professional wrestling is a multi-billion-dollar industry. There are networks, sponsors, international deals, merchandise empires, and all of that depends on maintaining a certain image, a certain control. CM Punk was a threat to that control. He was unpredictable, he was authentic, he didn't read from the script, and that made him dangerous. What if the attack on Punk wasn't about personal grudges or backstage politics? What if it was about protecting the business? What if multiple executives, multiple decision makers, multiple power players all agreed that Punk had to go, and they quietly funded the operation to make it happen? That's the conspiracy that keeps me up at night, because if that's true, then every wrestler who speaks their mind is at risk. Every performer who challenges the status quo could be next. But we're still dancing around the central question. Who specifically hired John to attack CM Punk? According to John's confession, it was someone with immense power, someone with connections throughout the industry, someone who had been plotting Punk's downfall for months. And when John finally revealed the name, even I couldn't believe it. The revelation. The person who hired John to attack CM Punk was a high-ranking executive from a competing wrestling organization. That's right, this wasn't an inside job from Punk's own company. This was corporate warfare. According to John, he was contacted by a representative of a rival promotion that saw CM Punk as a threat to their business model. They knew that if Punk continued to thrive, if he continued to be the voice of the voiceless, if he continued to draw massive crowds and generate mainstream attention, their company would suffer. So they made a decision. If they couldn't have CM Punk, nobody could. The executive in question allegedly told their representative, "Punk is bad for business, our business, all business. He's too unpredictable. He gives wrestlers ideas. He makes them think they have power. We need to send a message, not just to him, but to everyone watching." And that message was delivered through physical intimidation. Now, you might be asking, why would a competing company care that much about one wrestler? And that's a fair question, but you have to understand the landscape of professional wrestling. It's not really about competition anymore. The major companies have informal agreements. They share talent, they coordinate schedules, they work together to maintain the illusion of competition while actually functioning as one big monopoly. CM Punk threatened that system. He was talking about unionization, he was exposing business practices, he was encouraging wrestlers to demand better treatment, better pay, better working conditions. If Punk succeeded, it would cost these companies millions, maybe even billions over time. So they decided to shut them down, permanently. John says he was giving explicit instructions. Make it hurt, make it memorable, make sure he knows this isn't worth it. And for $5,000, John was willing to be the hammer that corporate wrestling used to nail down its biggest problem. But here's what the story takes an even darker turn. After the attack, John was supposed to disappear. He was supposed to take his money and fade into obscurity. But John made a mistake. He told someone, a close friend, another wrestler, and that wrestler told someone else, and slowly the story started to leak. The executive who orchestrated the attack panicked. They sent people to John's home. They offered him more money to stay quiet. They threatened his career, his family, his life. John went into hiding. For years he lived in fear, moving from state to state, never staying in one place too long, always looking over his shoulder. But guilt has a funny way of eating at a person. John couldn't live with what he'd done. He couldn't live with being a pawn in someone else's game. He couldn't live knowing that CM Punk's career had been destroyed by corporate greed. So he came forward. He reached out to journalists, he provided evidence, he named names. And now the wrestling world is about to explode. The aftermath. So what happens now? What are the consequences of this revelation? First, let's talk about CM Punk. The man has been through hell. He walked away from wrestling, fought legal battles, dealt with injuries, and spent years trying to rebuild his life outside the business he loved. Now we know it wasn't just burnout. It wasn't just creative differences. He was targeted. He was attacked. He was driven out by people who saw him as a threat to their power. How does Punk respond to this? Does he demand justice? Does he file lawsuits? Does he name the executive publicly and torch their reputation? Or does he do what Punk has always done best, use his voice to expose the corruption and call for change? My guess, Punk is going to be furious, and rightfully so. This man gave everything to professional wrestling. He sacrificed his body, his health, his personal relationships, and in return, he was terrorized by corporate suits who valued profit over people. If there's any justice in this world, Punk will stand up, look directly into the camera, and deliver another pipe bomb that makes his 2011 promo look like a warm-up act. But what about the executive who orchestrated this attack? What happens to them? Here's the frustrating reality. Probably nothing. These people operate in